This is how I show how to hold a bow to little ones when they're learning how to hold a bow. So the first thing I do, we do our shaky bunch of bananas. They do that with the right hand, floppy bananas, and we talk about how the bananas need to be all mushy and soft, and we don't want hard, horrible green bananas, so they have to be naturally spaced out like that. And then the next thing is we get the thumb, and the thumb is going to go here. You're just going to balance it on the fingertip of the thumb, just there. And it's got to be smiling, so you'll have a smile rather than a grumpy looking thumb, so it goes that way round. And then you have all your fingers drooped over like this, so all your bananas like we said earlier, and they're all tipping towards the point of the bow. So you've got your Sleeping Beauty lying on her side on a pillow, and we never want her to wake up, because if she wakes up she's a very grumpy woman, so she has to stay asleep, so you have to make sure that that whole hand is tipped towards the end of the bow. And then we've got these other fingers are on the ground, and this little pinky finger is our Humpty Dumpty finger, and because he's an egg he's got to be rounded, so we don't want a stick as a Humpty Dumpty because it's not a stick, he's an egg, so you have to make sure he's rounded and he's just touching there on the fingertip. And another thing to just check is whether this kind of eye, if you can hide it with that finger, so that, because they tend to want to do that quite a lot, but it's just to make sure that the fingers do go completely over and that you've got a nice open space there where they can sit a hamster in and not squash the hamster, but keep it relaxed like this one. Another thing I do, so I do lots of different activities because some ideas might work for some of them better than others. I do the balance, finding the balance spot in the bow, which is about there for me, and then I put all my fingers and I just have to balance my whole bow, not even putting my thumb on. So this is just to teach them how you don't actually have to hold your bow tightly to be able to hold the bow, so it's just all a balance really. And you've got your little finger just there, like we said earlier, and all you're going to do is put the thumb lid on without pressing, and then you just turn it over to get your bow hold, and then you can always shuffle it down to the bottom, or they might want to hold it up here when they're complete beginners, because it is a lot lighter and it then puts a bit less strain on the fingers. And the other game we do is we plant a tree on the ground, and we water it, and we give it some sunshine, and then our tree starts growing like this, so while we're holding our bow like this. And then we're going to knock on the fairy store, because there's a fairy that lives in the tree, and with a pinky we're going to go tap 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 tap. We're going to knock on that little door. So this is mainly to make sure they keep that pinky on top of the stick, because they tend to not want to put it there, they want to go down here and things like that. So it's just to make them aware of that pinky, where that needs to go. And then eventually she opens the door and she says, come in. So then you can start walking up the stick, go all the way to the top, walking up. You're not allowed to take a lift, there's no lift, so don't just go that's cheating, you can't do that. So you have to go up every single step all the way to the top, and at the top you get to choose whatever you want. You can take any treasure you'd like to take, and the children might say, oh, a bag of chocolate, or a bag of cars, or toys, whatever. And then you have to carry that bag of treasure on your back down. Coming down is harder because of course you're carrying a bag of treasure, so it is going to be a bit harder. You have to make sure at the same time the other hand, it's probably best to get them to hide it behind the back, because they want to try and use the two hands, and the whole point is for them to see they can just do it with one hand. So it's all about keeping their fingers really relaxed and not gripping at all, and every finger in the right position, because they can't really do this if their thumb is in the wrong place. So thumb always has to be in the middle of the hand. And that's it. And then we do things like rockets also. So the same thing, we'll do like a rocket, and we go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, blast off, and then they go into space. And then we can talk about the different bow angles. So if they're on baby E, their rocket's going to be almost vertical, but not quite. Okay, Auntie A, they will make the mountain slope, and she will go to that planet. Okay, I'll just actually move this so you can see the bow angle right. So that is baby E, that's Auntie A, that is Daddy D, so it's a bit flatter. He does not like going up hills. So he's going to be more like a racing car, probably not going into space, but it goes vroom, vroom, vroom that way. And Grandad G, you got to point downwards, and he sort of goes into swimming pool, he dives into swimming pool. So you have to have your elbow right up in the air on that one. But there are a few bow warm-ups you can do with them to try and get the bow hold the correct way. There's also the one which is like your bunny ears and bunny teeth. That one I find it ends up with a hand a bit more tense, so I don't use that one as much, but it does work for some children, so it's worth sort of knowing also, where you have your mouth, the bunny's mouth goes there, the two teeth go in the middle like that, so the two teeth that are in front of like the long teeth in the rabbit, and then he's got his ears, and then you just plop them down like this one. Or someone told me the other day one about snails, so they were thinking about the feelers. You could have the feelers, and then these are the kind of teeth down here, and the feelers, or the eyes, and then antennae sort of thing. So any of those ideas you could use.